Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here. You know who it is. In this video, we're going to be cringing with Ben.
Imagine a group of activists so powerful that they could beam their propaganda directly into your brain. Now also imagine that they're so sophisticated, they actually get you to pay them to do it. It's Hollywood.
Why? Oh no, Hollywood's beaming its propaganda in my brain. Whoa! I mean, how is what Hollywood does any different than what this video is trying to do right now? I mean, at least Hollywood isn't trying to sell what it's doing as anything more than, hey, it's fiction, hey, it's entertainment, hey, it's a story. This video is actually like trying to be vaguely informational and enlightening.
And just as Americans didn't think much about the carcinogens in the cigarettes they smoked for decades, most Americans don't think much about the toxic politics in the television they watch.
Oh, okay. So the messaging in television shows is as bad as cancer sticks.
Right. I spoke with nearly 100 members of the Hollywood community when I wrote my book, Primetime Propaganda, and many of them openly admitted they inserted social justice messages into their shows.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, I get it. People who create content, story-based content, put messaging into that content for the viewer, listener, reader to take away from that content as, I don't know, some advice or an opinion. This has been the case for story-based content since story-based content has been a thing. Some of the oldest stories and tales in the existence of humanity have morals to them, the moral to the story. This is nothing new. Like, just because somebody puts a message or an opinion in a story or is using a story as a vehicle to tell the audience something that the writer, the narrator, the creator believes, like, that's not...
Then have those characters act in ways most of us would judge wrong. Then, in effect, they ask us a question. Isn't it really okay that Rachel from Friends decided to have a baby without first marrying Ross?
The downfall of society! Okay, so, like, you are trying to talk about how toxic this media is for society, and the first thing you bring up, your prime example, is Rachel having a baby with Ross without first marrying. What is wrong with you? Like, yeah, obviously the statistics show that having children out of wedlock is not the best thing economically. However, people have been doing this long before Friends was even a thing, and the people doing it now aren't doing it because they saw Rachel and Ross do it on an episode of Friends. And listen, I hate Friends. I think it's a boring show. I think it's a boring show for boring people. However, even I know that Rachel and Ross not getting together is a great source of anxiety for huge fans of the show. Fans of the show want Rachel and Ross to get together. Nobody looks at them and thinks, oh, well, you know, they had a baby out of wedlock. That's cool. Having the baby out of wedlock serves as just another reason for them to get together and another source of stress for fans when they see them not getting together like they want them to be. They want them to be together. Duh. Like, this is your concern? This is what worries you? Does this keep you up at night? Ben, I triggered you, Shapiro, is worried about some people seeing Rachel and Ross from Friends have a baby out of wedlock.
It hasn't always been this way. For decades, Hollywood promoted traditional American values. That changed, as did so much else in the late 1960s and 70s, when Hollywood stopped celebrating American values and started transforming them.
That's not entirely true. Hollywood, since the beginning, even those shows like The Dick Van Dyke Show, or other television shows like maybe even Leave It to Beaver, like challenged taboos and challenged traditional parental roles by sort of showing those families in situations that were a little bit more real life or were a little bit more outside of the norm, just slightly, just ever so slightly. And the reason for that is that it causes struggle. It causes conflict. It puts the audience in a position where they really have to sit on the edge of their seat and really think about what's going on because the decisions that are being made are difficult and dire. So Oh, Ben. Just because something is being depicted doesn't mean that the people writing the story are pro that thing being depicted. That would be a very reductionist way of looking at things. I mean, for example, look back on a show like I Love Lucy. Lucille Ball as an actress and just I Love Lucy as a show in a lot of ways was seen as before its time. So it's not like back during that time period that you're citing that there weren't pieces of television, that there weren't movies that challenged in at least some way traditional gender roles, traditional family roles.
A year before the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court case, the top-rated TV sitcom Maude featured a storyline in which the title character of the show has an abortion. The LA Times described it as a watershed moment in TV history. Why? Well, because it removed the stigma of abortion.
No. Ben, there is still a stigma around having an abortion to this day. Nobody just gallivants around just bragging about the abortion that they got without at least some kind of judgment coming their way. Getting an abortion. And the example of Maude that you cited here is not really a significant example of anything. Television shows, and again, stories, for a very long time have addressed difficult, hot-button topics that are sort of that time, of that moment. Frasier, Cheers, Full House, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's almost like making the characters in these popular television programs go through and experience the same kind of problems that people in society are, makes for compelling television, and raises ratings because it garners interest, because it almost makes these characters a part of the same world that the viewers are existing in right then in that very moment. Whoa! Whoa! Like, if you've ever made anything, if you've ever created something, this would be really obvious to you. And yet it's not.
Millions of Americans sitting in their living rooms saw a beloved character do something they did not approve of, and they felt sympathy.
Oh my God, they felt sympathy. Oh, they felt sympathy for somebody going through a really hard life decision. Oh my God.
Vice President Joe Biden was right when he said that Will and Grace had a major impact on how Americans think about same-sex marriage. Seeing the charming and funny Will Truman live his life week after week paved the way for a much wider acceptance of same-sex marriage.
Citation needed. Citation fucking needed.
It's a bit of a mischaracterization, Ben, because I feel like by overemphasizing the role of this show and the influence of this show, you are totally undercutting, ignoring, and erasing the decades upon decades upon decades of activism that people in the LGBTQ community engaged in order to get the rights that they so rightfully deserved, just the right to marry each other. So, Jesus Christ. I feel like this is the opposite side of the same coin that we see Anita Sarkeesian flipping when she does her feminist frequency videos talking about video games and reinforcing and making people sexist and influencing people to be sexist. And it's most likely that Ben would see Anita's videos, toss them aside, ignore them, and act like there's no validity to what she's saying. Meanwhile, he'll make the same exact argument, but he'll flip it and turn it into, television is making people think it's okay to marry other people if they're the same gender.
In the early 2000s, Comedy Central had a show, That's My Bush, that openly mocked the 43rd president.
Like, you just bring that up. You don't really make a point about it. You just kind of mention that the show existed. And, George Bush was kind of a bumbling idiot. Not really that smart of a guy. The man himself admits he was a student at Yale. Number two, they pretty much put the kibosh on the show as soon as 9/11 happened in order to sort of put support behind the president and support behind the war effort and not look divisive in the court of public opinion. So, your argument that everything is to the left, everything is to the left, everything is to the left doesn't entirely hold true here. And on top of it, that show was created by Matt and Trey, who South Park, they kind of shit on everybody. There are tons of leftist topics and ideals that they completely tear apart in their shows, especially in the past couple of seasons. I get and I understand that there's a lot of popular media out there that has a left-leaning slant, but it only seems to influence and impact and infatuate itself with these social issues and not really the greater picture a lot of the time. Like, you don't see a lot of television shows attacking topics like, oh, I don't know, the war on terror and ending that, or I don't know, like a living wage, or Medicare for all. On the flip side, it's not like we don't have a mountain of media sources and outlets out there that have more of a right-leaning slant. Like AM radio, AM talk radio is almost predominantly right-wing. Like, if you want to see some tragically left-wing ideas, you probably have to go on the internet. You probably have to go on YouTube, just like I have to go on YouTube to see your tragically bad ideas here.
And of course, Hollywood despises Donald Trump. From crime dramas to the late-night comedy shows, he's relentlessly ridiculed.
Oh, no. Oh, poor baby. Oh, the world is so unfair. I'm in the most powerful political office. People don't like me.
According to the market research firm Childwise, teenage boys spend 8 hours per day in front of screens.
Okay, well, 8 hours a day in front of screens, that's not all television screens. And even if they are television screens, they're not watching Rachel and Ross from Friends have a baby out of wedlock. Nor are teenage boys watching Will and Grace. I don't even think teenage boys watch Orange is the New Black. They're teenage boys. They're spending 8 hours in front of a screen. They're probably watching porn.
By all means, enjoy television. I do. But remember, the people making TV don't merely want to entertain you. They want to influence you.
That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. That's what you're trying to do right here.